against a deadly fanaticism, and I have no doubt that despite the challenges, the painful challenges, the drama, the tears, despite the fear, which can sometimes overcome minds, despite suffering, we shall win out. Democracy shall always be stronger than the barbarians that declare war to it. This is a conviction which I hold dear to me, but I remain clear-headed as to the seriousness of the danger. Islamist terrorism is on all continents. It is occupying countries, it is destabilizing countries, it is killing entire populations, organizing attacks, be it directly or through inspiration. We have paid a heavy price, 238 dead and numerous wounded. Islamist terrorism has claimed to be a fake state led by real killers. They use Islam to spread hate, fundamentalism, and they use all the technological means at their disposal, and they use all sorts of smuggling to finance this. That is our enemy. We can name it. It is a dangerous enemy. And even if it is being beaten back, and here I'd like to commend Jean-Yves Drian and all of our armed forces, even if it is being beaten back in Syria and Iraq, it is moving to other places, in Africa, in Asia, wherever it can burrow in the chaos and the void. This is a cruel enemy. It is enrolling people and sending recruits to attack innocent people. This enemy is ever hungry. It wants to destroy the past because it hates civilization, and it wants to prohibit the future because it is attacking humanity. Democracy, and this has been said very well, is its target. Democracy is the exact opposite of what it is: freedom, tolerance, respect, culture, equality between men and women. These are principles that our enemy cannot tolerate. Islamist terrorism seems to believe that democracy is weak and that it can be scared, seeks to divide through terror, making democracy doubt itself by radicalizing small parts of the youth. But our enemy is wrong. We know history. We have seen that democracies always win wars. Sometimes they can be surprised when an unknown enemy jumps to attack them. But their victory is inevitable, because democracies have a strength that brings people together and that always wins over. This strength, which can lead to victory over anything, even the worst obstacles, this strength is freedom. This is how democracies beat fascism. This is how democracies beat Nazis. This is how democracies beat totalitarian regimes. And this is how dictators who thought that they could never be taken down were thrown out. And the same thing will be true of our current enemy. Terrorism will be annihilated. The fight shall be long. It will be difficult, because it has been a long time coming. This started in Afghanistan more than 30 years ago. A regime was being manipulated by foreign powers, and this led to a rebellion, a religious rebellion. And as in all wars of this kind, extremism plays into the hands of fanatics. This war then spread to other countries: Iraq, Syria, where religious fanatics use chaos to call people to jihad. and to create caliphates. And this is how Daesh terrorists created this wild plan to enslave people on behalf of a God that has been betrayed. They started by attacking their own religion, everywhere. Muslims were the first victims of these terrorists, and this is the same in France. Amongst the dead and the wounded in France, we can see that Muslims are paying a heavy price to terrorism. This is a new kind of war. This is a challenge to democracies around the world, and that is why France has committed, at home and abroad. We are fighting abroad and our armies are defending us there, because that is the same threat. Those are the same killers that we are facing in Syria, in Mali, and Iraq, and here. Letting terrorists set up an empire there strengthens them here. So France shall continue ever forward. France can count on the courage of its armed forces, of its police forces, the gendarmes, and also everyone else who contributes to keep us safe. But alongside Manuel Valls' government, I am doing everything to defend the French people, and I owe you the truth. The threat is there, and it's not going away anytime soon. So we need to be strong when we face it, and we must be level-headed. Being level-headed is a quality. That doesn't mean to not have emotions. It doesn't mean that we can't have compassion, which sometimes overcomes us, but what it means is that we should never let ourselves go. We must guarantee security without giving up on living how we want to live. Because that is what is so fundamental here. Terrorists are challenging us on two fronts. One, they are challenging us to beat them, and secondly, to stay ourselves. Islamists want to terrorize democracies, to exacerbate tensions and divisions. They want to drive our citizens apart and to create fear and suspicion for our fellow Muslims. This is a strategy that has been well thought out, planned in its most minute details. There are thinkers, if you can call them that. There are the executors of this strategy as well, and France, throughout its history, and also today, carries the highest standards in its principles when being attacked by outside aggressors. France has seen those thousands and millions of pencils held in the air after recent attacks. The first equality is that between men and women. France has fraternity. We are united on the principles of secularism and the values of the Republic. That is why we are being attacked. That is why we must respond. And there are two voices, two ways through which democracy can progress. First of all, would be to use exceptional measures, to suspend the rule of law for however long as the threat exists. However, as we've seen throughout history, when faced with worse threats, including in the 20th century, it is when the Republic stayed as it was that it won, and when it compromised that it lost. Freedom is not a handicap, it is our main asset, because free people are people, even if they sometimes seem carefree, are ready to sacrifice everything to defend freedom. This is what Gilles Filkenstein was saying. Freedom is like the air that we breathe. It surrounds us, and we forget about it. But when we lack it, we suffocate, we struggle, we fight, because you cannot live without it. This is why we fight. There is always a meaning behind a fight. This isn't simple resistance or just talk. We are fighting. A country is not an antiquated idea. It is a reason to fight, and France is committed for freedom. This is a simple idea, an essential idea, and some people seem to not understand it. We can see them. They are fighting, bickering to stand out from the pack. And they are forgetting that the only true pack is the Republic. I'm seeing that some people are taking this very far and are showing themselves to be very imaginative. All of a sudden, to defend the rule of law, we need to damage it. Put people in internment camps, to simply lock up suspects without trial. We're even hearing ideas of going back to old systems where justice was no longer independent, to renege on human rights and international conventions. All of a sudden, hundreds of thousands of young people living in France may not necessarily know what their future holds. They are suggesting going back on French conventions and tying immigration to terrorism. These changes would be backward steps, but they would not protect the French people. Here again, history is teaching us that forgetting our principles makes the world more unhappy but no more safe. Did the Patriot Act or Guantanamo Bay protect the US? No. Constitutional principles are not mere artifices. Freedom of movement, is that a mere idea? Freedom of expression, the freedom for religion, the presumption of innocence, is that a mere legal idea? No. No, the Constitution is not something you can take away from and add to easily. The Declaration of Human Rights is not an old parchment that should be put under frame in a museum. The Declaration of Human Rights is the pillar of our society, along with the Constitution. These are the values, these are the principles that are on the front of our public buildings, and that is why our gendarmes, our policemen and our armed forces and many others who put themselves in danger are ready to sacrifice. If we want to bring democracies together against terrorism, we should not sacrifice democracy's soul. The other way forward, the only one which is viable, is the rule of law. This is the choice I made on behalf of France. Throughout the 5-year term, there have been so many attacks. Before I even came into office, there were attacks and killings. And recently we have seen attempts, and when they are thwarted, we don't say anything. But when they kill people, when they massacre people, we know what people feel in these times. The draw to vengeance, the desire to eradicate. Therefore, we have acted, we have brought a response with law, international law, when our armed forces are abroad. Our Minister for Foreign Affairs, Jean-Marc Ayrault, knows this very well. When our armed forces act abroad, they work within the framework of the United Nations. We are not involved in preemptive wars. We act to defend ourselves, to destroy the strongholds from which these attacks are commanded. And here, we act within the framework of our constitution, of our laws, and we use these to fight against radicalization and fight against jihadists and indoctrination. We made all the decisions, even the most difficult decisions, hand in hand with the government, with Manuel Valls and the Parliament. No person could say in all honesty that we have not done everything to support our armed forces, our gendarmes and our policemen. No one could honestly say that the Minister for the Interior, in all his courage and determination, yes, in all his courage and determination, which attracts respect, has not done everything. None can say that we have not used all the means at our disposal to annihilate our enemy. Need I remind you of the 9,000 new jobs that have been created in the police forces? Because yes, beforehand 13,000 had been cut. Need I add that the military law, suggested by Jean-Yves Le Drian, has been reinforced, whereas the previous one had been slashed? And we have ended the reduction in headcount in the military. Over 4 years, and this was unexpected. This is not something that was in my political promises. We have voted in 4 anti-terrorism laws and 1 intelligence law, which enable us to fight against foreign acts, to fight against promotion of terrorism on the internet, and giving our judges new means to fight against financing of terrorism and reinforcing the sentences for terrorism-related crimes. The state of emergency, which was reinforced and prolongated, I wish I could have put these things into the Constitution to give them a proper framework, but I was stopped in that. This state of emergency, these laws, these weapons we have enabled us to thwart many attacks, to dismantle networks and to initiate many court cases, to close mosques which were preaching hate, and to deport dangerous individuals. They've enabled us to always be nimble and proactive. We have always done this within the framework of the Constitution and under the tutelage of the Constitutional Council. But these actions have sometimes gone against some ways of thinking, gone against some friends who did not want us to go too far. But we were not going too far. We were making sure that we brought the necessary response within the bounds of the law to be effective against the terrorists. This is important because it would be false to claim that the state of law was binding our hands in our fight, or to claim that democracies cannot fight against this kind of threat, or even worse, that we were being attacked because we were weak. The opposite is true. It is because we are strong. It is because we have weight in the world's destiny. It is because we act abroad. It is because we are a country that is a shining example for many others that we are being attacked. And the strength of our response needs to be proportionate to how we see ourselves. None could honestly claim that there will be no more attacks. I would not claim that. What I can, however, guarantee to the French people is that all the strength of the state will be brought against the enemy. I have a deep conviction that we shall win out. We shall win out because with the state of law, we have the necessary tools, and we shall win out on one condition, that our cohesion is our shield. That is the challenge of the coming times. If the French people become divided, if democracies turn away from each other, as if jumping off a sinking ship or running towards nationalist trends, then the fight against terrorism will become more distant, and the danger would be to see an unraveling of what we have been building over many years, especially since the end of the Second World War. I am part of a generation that was born in the middle of the 1950s, and we saw democracy as the universal regime. It was going to take time, but democracy was to spread throughout the world. There could be no questioning democracy because it has already proven its perfection, even though it had been challenged. That is no longer the case. What seemed the firmest ideas back then are no longer. Things are being discussed that we thought would never be. Democracy. What we thought was a rampart against extremism is now maybe a mere fence to jump over. Maybe the final fence they need to jump over to get to us. What we thought irreversible is now weak. This is why I am acting, to reinforce our cohesion. It is so much easier to play on fears, to play to people's darker sentiments that we all carry. It would be too easy to think that a bad wind can blow in the right direction. It's too easy to point the finger, to say us and them, even within the national community. This is why I fight. This is not just a topic we're bringing up because some dates are approaching. This is something that shall determine the future of our fellow citizens, because it's not a question of deciding whether we do more or less, whether we give to Party A or Party B, whether we give or whether we take away. It is the fundamentals that are being challenged. And this is also why I refuse exceptional measures. As these measures damage public services, damage our schools. That is the foundation of my commitment. Cohesion doesn't mean everyone being the same. Cohesion doesn't mean that we need to erase our differences or even our disagreements. But it requires not giving in to provocation or stigmatization. That is the challenge of secularism. Secularism is not a state religion that is against other religions. Secularism is a set of rules which people in a republic live by. Secularism means neutrality for the state and also for the citizens, who must adhere by its principles. State guarantees to every person the freedom to believe or not. to practice their religion, to express their religious ideas, so long as, and this is something you can see in the 1789 Declaration of Human Rights, that what they say is not a threat to public peace. Not everything had been made perfect back then, but the idea of what living together had already been set. This is why, in 1905, the Parliament, after a long debate, decided to separate the Church from the state. 1 century later, for the very same reasons, in 2004, all visible religious signs were prohibited in schools, not to discriminate, but to protect the freedom of children and young people. The 1905 law came about at a time when there were very few practicing Muslims on the French mainland. And that is why the question now is to decide whether the rules laid down in 1905 still apply now. Now Islam is the second biggest religion in the country. Can Islam fit into secularism as Catholicism and Judaism have in the past? Can Islam accept the separation of religion and state, which is the foundation of secularism? And my answer to that question is yes. Clearly, yes. The huge, overwhelming majority of our Muslim compatriots show this every day by practicing in various ways their religion without damaging public order. And after every attack, and this is something I've seen with the Prime Minister and all relevant ministers, every time there has been this kind of attack, I have been deeply moved, like many of you, by all of the shows of fraternity for Father Hamel, and people came together to grieve the loss of a man who was kindness itself. Muslims were there. People who did not believe in any religion were there. And the Catholics had an excellent response themselves. And this shows that France itself can recognize religions and also unite behind values and a cause which unite us all. So there's a question to be put to the Republic. Can the Republic welcome an unexpected religion? 100 years ago, we did not expect the scale of this new religion, but there is nothing in secularism that cannot allow Islam, so long as the religion obeys the rule of law. So long as I am President of the Republic, there shall be no circumstantial legislation. There shall be no legislation that is inapplicable and anti-constitutional. I'm not saying this because of the system or because some people need ever more laws. I am saying this because I have a deep-seated belief that our laws are sufficient. We need to apply them and we need to make them effective. And I will not let integrists test the limits of the Republic. And I will not give them any excuse to stigmatize Muslims either.
We need to build a French Islam. This is not a new challenge. In 2003, a French Council of Muslim Religion was set up. It wasn't extended as we would have liked it to see. Therefore, the government launched an initiative, the initiative of the dialogue with French Islam. This work led to 3 decisions. The first one is the following. We are going to set up a French Islam Foundation in order to support all the cultural, educational, social initiatives and contribute to the proper insertion of Islam in the French society. This foundation is a secular one, and its objective is to grant knowledge in order to tackle intolerance. Then was set up a national cultural association in order to find, in transparency and without the participation of the state, the national funding to build mosques and to train imams. Last but not least, the Republic can't do with a situation where most imams are trained abroad and don't even speak French. It will therefore no longer be the case. Beyond all these texts, all these institutions that we can set up, beyond this organization that we need to make prevail, it is up to French Muslims to face their responsibilities as citizens. They need to push Islamist terrorism back. I don't ask them to do that more than anybody else, because it is not about religion, it is a republican fight. Nothing can be tolerated. Verbal provocation, anti-Semitism, homophobia, hate speech, anywhere. No one can forget what are the values that we share are. It goes beyond religion. Everyone needs to push obscurantism back, especially where it tries to hide. But I would also like to state something very clearly. Each and every one of us, French citizens, no matter their religion, where they come from, their beliefs, their faith, the way they became French, all the French are here in France at home. In France, there are citizens sharing the same rights and the same duties. The Republic is one, indivisible. It doesn't make any difference between its children. This is its strength. This is what enables it to integrate, to grant all French people the pride that they can share. French national cohesion is also about our social model. I'm the head of state and therefore I'm the guardian of this, but it is the French people's common heritage. It gives our democracy a strength that goes beyond the law. This is what I would call the social state. That is a series of institutions which organize fraternity between people, between territories. This is threatened as well. It is under threat because of people who want to challenge the rule of law. Those people who are trying to have a momentum, and because they feel free, they feel that power is here, that they can reach it, they are there, they settle, they get organized. They think that the election is the primaries and the rest doesn't matter, that French people will just come, sign at the end of the page. And they will say, well, you've chosen, and therefore we can no longer do it. Well, I would like to say one thing. On behalf of universal suffrage, and until May, I am still the only elected one. I would like to say one thing then. In a democracy, there are elections. An election, it's not easy, is it? Winning an election is difficult. You need to deserve it, you need to get ready for it, you need to prepare, and you need to respect citizens.
Alors, il y a dans ce concours que l'on voit qui va durer.
Now, in this sort of competition, there is a race to eradicate the social model, as if this social model was too heavy, as if it was our obstacle, preventing us from being what we are, so wealthier for some, and too bad for the others. This is the main danger. There is another one. The social model needs to be modernized constantly, reformed constantly. We need to add things to it so that it can adapt to reality. And we can see that there are new needs. And its funding mustn't prevent companies from being competitive. But a robust state is a nation based on solidarity. This is why we can't dissociate the social model and democracy. The reforms that I've implemented since 2012 go in that direction. I'm not going to remind you of all those reforms. It would take a day to list them all. But still, our retirement system has been preserved. It now takes into account difficulties, hardship at work. The funding is well balanced. We have modernized the whole reimbursement system. Access to healthcare has improved. There are fewer inequalities. New rights have been created. I'm also thinking about the labor law, about the youth guarantees, bonus for productivity. Territorial policy has tried to focus on most destitute areas. We've tried to introduce a fight against discrimination. Well, these are just a few examples. I would just like to insist on the fact that the social model can reform itself in order to be more efficient, but that's not all. It can also take into account new needs. In a democracy, progress is always possible. When a democracy stalls, when it thinks that it has accomplished what was its destiny, well then why should we keep it? Why should we protect it if there are no more challenges? No, democracy is more than that. Democracy is ongoing progress. It is a future, it is a destiny. In this cohesion policy, an institution has a crucial role. There is one. It's school. Everybody agrees on that. I've never met anyone claiming that they were against school, except people who left school early, the dropouts. So from that point of view, people recognize that school can bring something. But here again, I hear people saying that we should slash educational spendings, reduce the number of teachers, means put at the disposal of children. Well, once again, I have a strong belief. However, what will need to be done in the years to come will be to rebuild what has been destroyed, but that has been done already. Obviously, we will have to create new job opportunities for teachers. We will have to bring forward reforms, but that's not all. We will have to make sure that school can fulfill its role by making it more fair, so fairer, more open, more innovative, even more autonomous sometimes, so that schools can decide on what they need to do, for example, to take into account the most vulnerable, the dropouts. Lots need to be done still in order to promote vocational learning, etc. You'll say there is a lot to be done, and we are far from the topic of the fight of counter-terrorism. But no, this is part of the answer. This is part of the solution, because against misinformation, etc., democracy and school education are the best weapons that we have, the most efficient tools that we have to tackle chaos. This is the reason why we've introduced at school the class about secularism, freedom of speech, well, gender equality. This is an essential issue, and we must not give in, because public school, the public school, is all about gender equality. But here again, faced with an enemy such as the one that we know, Islamist terrorism, democracy cannot work without the commitment of its members. Authoritarian regimes flourish thanks to fear. Democracies flourish thanks to cohesion. When there is a lack of hope, extremism comes up again. Here again, we can see that history doesn't repeat itself, but we know that whenever democracy doubts itself, nationalism, demagogy, populism flourish. The proponents always say the same thing. They claim that they are for the people, against the elite, and they usually come from the elite, from the highest part of the elite. This is true in France, in Europe, and even in the United States. In a way, wealth is a fight against elitism. The poor would be the new elite of democracy. It's funny, you think about communism where the workers were at the forefront. Now the elite thinks that they are the embodiment of the people, that they are their spokespeople. And we always hear the same criticism against democracy, against its failures, against its weaknesses, its red tapes, its elected officials, and common thinking. Common thinking is called democratic thinking. That is to say, reminding principles, thinking that believes in values, a way of thinking that there are rules to be respected in society. It is not really common thinking, it is what enables us to live together. But at the same time, there are a new form of social or political radicalism. They leverage the excesses of globalization, or they leverage inequality. And people call for, well, a breakout from the rest of the world. Now there are no more alternatives. They don't put anything new on the table. And we mustn't underestimate this danger. Sometimes people can tend to prefer demonstrating rather than trying to bring new things on the table. But democracy is all about the suffrage. It is about committing oneself. People shouldn't just vote. I've tried to promote civic service, and I'm always very proud to see people from all around France showing the shirt that they received during this civic service. I'm talking about my generation, but when we had to when we were conscripted, we were not always as happy because it was mandatory. We were aware of what it meant, but civic service to this day has been about engagement, committing to serving other people and trying to give the best of oneself. It is also very pleasant. It is very pleasant to give the best of oneself. I'm telling that to people who are trying to give the worst of themselves. We're always prouder to do good than to do evil things. And therefore, we've tried to extend it to have a citizen reserve And some people wanted to give more, and soon there will be a national guard. And here again, we were impressed by young people who spent summer after the 14th of July, after the Nice terrorist attack. People who said, "We are here, we are ready, we are going to train. We are students, so we also have professional activities. We work. We are mothers, fathers. We want to engage. We want to do something." I'm also aware that if our democracy wants to be strong and powerful, it needs to be renewed. I mean, there are the institutions as well, but this is not the topic. Some people would like to challenge the presidential position. I'm going to speak from my own experience. From that point of view, the Fifth Republic, facing external and domestic threats, gives us the means to act. Fast response is essential. Fast response is possible thanks to the President. Democracy has nothing to fear when Parliament is able to work efficiently. But I would like to say one more thing. If the President hadn't been able to intervene in Mali, for example, it would have been too late. It would have been too late to deploy our air forces in Syria and Iraq. It would have been too late. And to take action overnight during the terrorist attacks, without the system, we wouldn't have been fast enough. But if the Parliament doesn't provide proper control, is not able to know whether the means are the most appropriate, or if the means and the ends are the best, well, then democracy is a challenge. There will be a need for institutional reforms. Now, the solution is not about using ordinances, those decrees. We hear a lot about these days. Let's remove Parliament, let's just stop using a Parliament. There are dispositions in the Constitution as well, which have to do with national representation. Other people prefer to use referendums, but there is a risk. Abuse for the one using it, or hijacking the referendum for those who vote for it. But I'm not sure democracy would move forward using these methods. Although I trust the people, I think that all types of elections are opportunities to ask the people for a mandate. And we usually don't need to ask a very precise question that can be hijacked and that would just divide the people. Based on our experiences here and abroad, there have been many referendums, but the answers were not necessarily what we expected. People say, "Oh, we answered this, but we didn't answer the question. It would take time to find the right solution, etc." I mean, based on all these experiences, we can see that there are some people urging people to vote for something, but then just don't face up to the responsibilities that derive from that decision. Well, let's just avoid that situation. Citizens must have a say, especially at the local level or even in political debates, in co-legislations, what we did with the Digital Republic, but it also applies to other texts. I'm thinking about citizen juries and general states dealing with major issues where citizens can express themselves, can say what they think of a text or another, can improve those texts. Much still needs to be done to open up our assemblies so that they represent more our people. And if we are proud, and I am proud, to have an unlimited number of mandates, I think some people want to go back to that. So we can clearly see how society is evolving. I want us to go even further by reducing the number of mandates that one person can serve over time.
Ce qui n'empêcherait pas, bien sûr, à ces élus de concourir.
Elected officials could still stand in elections, but without plurality of offices.
Or, l'image de la politique, c'est aussi
This
l'expression
is
de la
about
démocratie.
the political
Quand la politique est
arena's
faible,
reputation. And when
quand la politique
politics is weak,
atteinte,
when politics is
quand la politique est
targeted, is threatened, when it reflects the
oui, c'est la
chaos,
démocratie qui est en cause.
well, democracy is at
Parce que la
stake.
politique, c'est l'expression même
Because politics
de la
is
démocratie.
the very
C'est qu'on
expression
peut pas
of democracy.
distinguer l'une et l'autre.
We can't really
Et la
divide
politique de ces derniers jours,
those
hélas,
two
en
things.
fournit une triste
And
illustration.
we've been able to see it clearly
Je vais
these
parler
past
d'une
few
république
weeks.
exemplaire.
I mentioned
Ça ne voulait
a
pas dire
republic,
qu'il
an
n'y aurait plus jamais de
exemplary
fautes commises.
republic. It doesn't mean that there wouldn't be any failures or mistakes made by elected officials. It may and still means something different. It means that
Elle serait mise à
today
jour. Et
democracy
si la justice
would
en
be
décidait, punit
transparent,
des condamnations exemplaires.
and there would be
C'est ça,
exemplary sentences when a mistake is made. This is what I meant, and this is why I set up the High Authority for Transparency and Clarity of Public Life. This is progress. It mustn't be considered as suspicion or defiance against the elected officials. It must be about showing that elected officials can be trusted and there is nothing to fear when it comes to transparency. Ladies and gentlemen, shortly, the French people will decide on their future and the future of their country. They will judge the result, they will take stock of what has been done and by whom. Now, what are the challenges? What are the issues? Protection of the French people, national cohesion, the social model, the idea of democracy, the role of France in Europe and in the world. These are the various issues. It is a block. Unity will be our strength. Solidarity will help us stay united. France's determination will help Europe defend itself, because Europe needs to defend itself. And it is the confidence that we have in our values and in ourselves that will mean that we will be able to defeat terrorism. This debate goes even further. I'm sure you've understood that there is the idea of French identity. But it goes beyond that. Our identity, let's talk about our identity. Our identity is our history, our culture, our values, our way of life. The identity is neither happy or sad. It is based on the patient contribution, the great contribution of successive generations that have built the French nation. It is not stuck in time. It is not a picture, something that doesn't change. It is not contemplation of the past. It is not about trying to find our roots, to see how far our roots go, to know how French we are. No, identity is an ever-moving entity. This is the reason why France is more than an entity. It is an idea, it is a project, it is an ambition, which means that France is a unique country that is considered as a model in the world. It is this idea, the idea of France, that needs to mobilize us and that we need to support.
Le danger serait que face à l'épreuve,
The danger would be to doubt ourselves faced with this challenge. France would close itself. It would forget about its mission. Well, then how would we be able to thwart attacks, build Europe, if we stop believing in ourselves? As President of the Republic, I'm fortunate enough to travel around the world. A few hours ago, I was in Vietnam. A painful history between Vietnam and France at times. Once again, and I think about it very often. I see in the eyes of the people that I meet or of their representatives, I see one thing, this sparkle every time France is mentioned. Sometimes I'm a bit troubled. Do we deserve this? Because sometimes we doubt ourselves, we doubt of the love that we have. No, I'm not talking about the love for the President of the Republic. I'm really making a difference here. But if the French don't understand how much they are loved and praised around the world, well, and why? I mean, we've seen some fractures in the past, but there is always culture. The French language can also be a vector of love, but there is something more. The idea of France, its project, its exemplarity, its confidence, its trust in democracy. France is a country with a universal conception of its role. Of course, sometimes it means that France is unbearable for others who think that we are we are bragging too much, we think that we have more than we deserve, but they are wrong. We are doing well. Our defense system is operational, our financial situation is improving, and we have a very dynamic demographics. But it is the idea of France that means that all these people look up to us. And we've been supported. We've seen a lot of support for France when we were under attack. And many other countries have been under attack, but France was really supported because all countries knew that attacking France was attacking freedom, democracy, culture, a way of life. This is the reason why we need to be fully attached to this idea of France so that we don't let it collapse. We don't let it collapse. And France is an idea. It's the future. The danger would be to doubt ourselves or get divided. Our country is made up of many political families with many different personalities and people. But for people who love democracy, who love the Republic, who love progress, who love the idea that, once again, I've shown you, the idea of France, well, they need to be united. We need to be united. We need to protect the social model. And defending this requires us to be united. When we are faced with a threat, we need to unite. I will not turn my back to this objective. This is what has motivated me through this term. And more than anyone, I've felt this need to be united. And therefore, I will tell you one thing. I will not let France be damaged, be reduced. I will not have France's freedoms undermined, its rule of law challenged, its education slashed, and its culture amputated. It is the fight of one life. France is a country that will make crucial decisions for Europe, for its mere existence. I'm truly a European, and I will not let Europe dislocate or disappear. I will not give in to nationalism by extremism.
In some way, the end of Europe would be the end of an idea of democracy. It's not just peace that is being threatened. It is what the European Union was able to build year after year with its values, with countries, with governments. should I say,
prendre maintenant en charge ce qui relève
that are
de
saying
la
that
responsabilité de l'Europe.
now is not the time to stand up to the European plate. Even though those governments, those countries were welcomed into the European Union because we wanted them with us together to fight against totalitarianism.
Moi, des gouvernements ou des pays qui ne viennent pour l'Europe que pour les fonds qu'elle peut
There are
éventuellement
governments,
dispenser
countries
pour
that
le
are coming
marché
to
qu'elle
Europe
peut
for
organiser.
the
Pour la place
market or for the
financière,
funds that can
c'est
be
formidable
provided,
d'être en Europe. On a une place financière.
or for being able to say that it's great to be in Europe.
Être en Europe, mais qui veut être toujours la place financière de l'Europe. Eh bien non, l'Europe.
And you end up with
c'est pas qu'une
countries
place
that want to
financière,
be
c'est aussi un espace
the financial
commun de
center
valeurs, de
of
principes,
Europe, but not being
où on
in
est
Europe. No,
ensemble.
Europe is a set of values, of principles.
Voilà pourquoi ce qui va se produire dans la décision qu'auront à prendre les Français.
That is why the decision that the French people will have to make is so important and has so many consequences, because we are a nation that is committed to peace, to development, to saving the planet. Yes, it was here in Paris that we signed the agreement on fighting against climate change, and around the world everyone knows that this happened in Paris, and that ecology, that the environment are not constraints, but these are opportunities. This is an opportunity to create the world we want for our children and for our grandchildren. So once again, I will not let the image of France, the influence of France change in the coming months or in the coming years. We are France, ladies and gentlemen. We are France. And let me tell you, democracy is our weapon. Democracy is our soul, and that is how we will beat terrorism. Long live the Republic, long live France.